Alright, before we get into why the ACSS reticle sucks, let's get into the positives behind it and how it works so you know I fully understand the reticle's capabilities. This way I don't get an onslaught of comments trying to explain what I already know. As a matter of fact, I wanted to go with the ACSS reticle on the ACOG in my SCAR, but it was during coronavirus times and they didn't answer their phone, and they said they had no intentions of answering their phone, and if they don't have the time to talk to me about some technical specifications about a $1,000 reticle, I don't have time to send them $1,000. So I went with the straight up ACOG reticle because I was able to get a hold of Trijicon on the phone, talk to them, make sure I was buying the exact product I needed for my application. And by all means, the ACSS reticle is far superior over just your normal ACOG reticle because it gives you more information. So the ACSS reticle will look a little something like this. You got a scale to measure from the foot of a person to their head, which will correlate to a range. It'll have the range right there, and it'll say. It also has lead, so if you're within, 100 yards, and the target's running, you put this little dot on there, and by the time they get to there, the bullet will be there. It's also got a 5-mile-an-hour windage scale. It's also got a scale that you put from shoulder to shoulder, and that'll also give you your range. So you can go on this scale first, get a range, then put this scale on the shoulders to verify that the range is correct, and make your shot. Now the ACOG reticle is similar to this, except this is a chevron, this information's missing, this information's missing, this information's missing, this little donut here is also for estimating range. The pros of the ACSS reticle is it works really good at people. It's very fast. It has lead included right into the reticle. It also has a 5-mile-an-hour wind included into the reticle. So why didn't I go with it with the BA Shredder project? Why would it completely suck for that particular project and be completely not feasible? Number one, the reticle is too coarse. This only gives you markings for targets, people-sized targets, at 100 yards or 100-meter intervals. I can't remember if they go off yards or meters. I think it's yards. So, for example, if I want to make a shot at 250 yards, I have to guesstimate. Yeah, it's pretty easy to do, but it gets a little bit harder as you get farther down in the range. I have to guesstimate where 335 yards would be in between 300 and 400. So it's just guesswork at that point. Ideally, with a target this size, it really doesn't matter. But that's another one of the cons. It only works well on people. Targets this size, with that particular reticle, if you use the reticle properly, you will land a shot somewhere on that target. It doesn't really matter where, but this is a very large target. We're talking something like 70 inches. What if I'm shooting at a rabbit? Or a deer? Or a street light? Or a car's radiator? Or a tire? Anything at all besides people, the reticle no longer works. It's BDC only. It's for a very specific bullet, and it's for a very specific barrel. If you veer outside of that, say with like the 243, there's nothing for it. They'll give you a little chart to convert, but that defeats the whole purpose of the reticle. If my shot does not land right here, when it says I should be aiming right here, that's pretty freaking useless. So you have limited options of different scopes, but you have to make sure you have the exact barrel and you're shooting the exact projectile, otherwise you'll be a little bit off. And that kind of defeats the purpose of that. You might as well just use Kentucky windage and a holdover. Oh, what have we got here? BDC only. It's more for defensive. And because the only thing we're really going to defend ourselves up against is people, well, it's designed for people. Now, what if you want an offensive firearm? That reticle is pretty useless. That's not something you would want to use in an offensive situation. In an offensive situation, the ball is in your court. You're dribbling, you get to make the first shot. So you want to know very specifically where that shot's going to go. For defensive, it doesn't really matter. You just want to get the shots close enough so they'll duck, ideally so you'll hit your intended target. Offensive, you may be trying to take out a communications dish. It may not be a person you're even shooting at. You may be going offensive on a deer. You may be going offensive on a rabbit. You may be going offensive on a street light that you need to take out so you can cross that particular path so you're not standing in direct light. You never know. The point is there's a very good chance when you're going offensive you're not actually shooting at a person. Now, you can estimate range with mil dots, mil radians, or MOA. I choose MOA because that's simplest for me. Within 500 yards, if I want to know how far a target is, we got the target's height in inches, or width, like shoulders, divided by MOA, gives you range. Now, past 500 yards, because MOA isn't a true 1-inch measurement, it's 1.047. That 0.47 starts adding up. At about 500, then you might need to start figuring in the 0.47. But it's okay, because you can always print off a cheater card just to have, just in case you're shooting at something farther. I also prefer MOA because it's a little bit more coarse. So your mil dot and mil radian looks a little something like that. You're trying to guesstimate. You're like, okay, I need 1/10 of a mil. So you take this frickin' circle, or oblong, and you try to divide it into 10 equal parts in your brain, and then cut off just 1/10 of it. And then there's a bunch of unknown territory in between it. With MOA, the reticle looks a little more like this. They're much closer together. So say, for example, I'm measuring my shoulders, 18 inches, and I pull up, I don't know, we'll go 4 MOA. 18 divided by 4. That's 450 yards I would be standing away from the scope if I measure 4.5 MOA from shoulder to shoulder, or 4 MOA from shoulder to shoulder. So you don't have to actually put the reticle on a person. You could be like, a car is, or a fire hydrant is this tall, or a lamppost is this tall, or I know that a roof spread or a door on a house is this far apart. You can go with known measurements and use a normal MOA reticle on any of those to figure out the range. We'll say a door is 20 inches apart, so I would measure it in MOA. I take that MOA, I take 20 divided by the amount of MOA that it comes across there, and I would know very accurately, within 500 yards, how far away that door frame is from me. Now again, past 500 yards, then you're going to want to pull out your little chart, and it'll say MOA on one side, and it'll say size of target on the other, and then you just come together. They have the same charts for mils and mil radians, but again, I feel that making accurate measurements with mil and mil radians has a much steeper learning curve. Yes, when you learn it, it's very fast, because it'll be ingrained in your memory, and you'll be able to pull up targets much, much faster. And I know that you could figure out, okay, so this line is that many MOA apart, but again, there's a lot of guesswork in this if you're not specifically shooting at a human-sized target. And that's why I went with that MOA reticle and not an ACSS reticle on the BA Shredder, because that is an offensive rifle. Now on my SCAR, I went with an ACOG. And like I said, I did actually want an ACSS reticle, but it just didn't pan out that way, because the SCAR is my defensive rifle from 300 to 500 yards. And if I'm defending myself, obviously it's against the person, so that would make sense. Now the SCAR still does have a BDC reticle, and it does still have a way to measure, but it's only shoulder to shoulder. It's missing a bunch of the other grids, plus it don't give me my wind at 5 miles an hour. Where the BA Shredder, that's my offensive rifle from 300 to 500 yards. And if I'm going offensive, there's a chance I might not actually be shooting at a person. You don't know. I could be taking out a material target. I don't know. That's why I want the options of that, and I don't want as coarse of a reticle. I want to be like, so it's 500 yards, or 300 yards, or 400 yards. I know exactly that the bullet's going to drop X amount of MOA within that, or 450 yards, so I want to be able to come down to exactly where it's going to drop, and I want to be able to figure out, well, I'm not very good at wind, but my chart will tell me, of this amount of crosswind, it should veer this much. I want to be able to go exactly to that, and then if I miss, I want to see a clear splash on my grid or an impact, so I can just move that point over and shoot again. If, for example, with the ACSS reticle, everything lines up, I'm supposed to be hitting right here, I'm guesstimating an 8-mile-an-hour wind because this goes to 5, so now I'm just randomly holding over in this empty space. I don't have any crosshairs to line up with or anything. It's just guesswork. So then I shoot there, and let's say I hit here. Well, now I got to try to guesstimate to get right to there. With your Christmas tree pattern, or that's what I call it anyway, you got your lines, and then each one of these have lines, and it's just a grid. So if I'm supposed to be hitting right here, and I aim right here, and I actually hit right here, there's a grid pattern coming across, so I know exactly where on my reticle I'm going to be shooting at that particular distance and that particular wind. So I can shift my reticle from right here, or shift my point of aim from right here to over here, and continue to fire, and there's a very high probability that my next shot will be a hit, and any shots I take with that particular wind at that particular distance are going to land right here, so it's very repeatable. And that's why I don't like the ACSS reticle on anything except for defensive purpose rifles only. Because if it's a defensive purpose rifle, unless UFOs come down or bears figure out how to use guns, which would be freaking terrifying, you will be going against people. Because what else would you be defending yourself against? Well, pretending that armored vehicles aren't out there, but even if somebody's like on a tripod with a 50, like, you should still be able to see their shoulders. And then, yes, an ACSS reticle would work. For offensive, you don't know exactly where you're going to put the shot. Because the ball's in your court. You get to pick all that good information. You get to pick your range. You get to pick where you're going to line up to make sure that you don't have a crosswind. So you get much more options. So it's a much better setup to have a finer reticle so you can make precise shots. With defensive, it doesn't really matter. You're just trying to get lead down range. Ideally, you would like to hit the target, but even if you just get close, they'll duck and you can make your escape. But anyway, that's my reasoning behind not going with the ACSS reticle on the BA Shredder project. If you'd like to check that project out, there'll be a link right here. If you'd like to check out any of my other videos, click on these links. If you'd like to help support the channel, got my Patreon right there. I also have affiliate links in the description down below. Even if you don't buy what that link is for, just clicking on that link and doing the Amazon shopping you do anyway, I don't kickback for it because you went there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.